Welcome to EVONA Origin Stories, the space podcast where we look to bring you extraordinary leaders from within the sector and their fascinating stories of early life, career, and how they broke into the space industry.
Our guest on the podcast today is Kelly Larson, serial entrepreneur and CEO of Aquarian Space. Kelly is a perfect example of why we started this podcast in the first place, to share exciting and diverse space origin stories. After starting life on her parents' farm in rural Iowa, she actually started her early career as a yoga teacher. From here, after a very surprising turn of events, she eventually became CEO of Aquarian Space, the world's first high data rate internet service provider for the solar system, which is really incredible and very exciting work. Kelly is passionate about inspiring other women to join STEM industries and is widely known for her innovative approaches to business. She's got some really valuable and very unique insight that we're excited to share with you.
Hello.
Hey Kelly, how you doing?
I'm doing really well, thank you. How are you?
Yes, all good, thanks. Thanks for taking the time to speak to us today. I appreciate it. How's things?
Great. It's a beautiful August.
Good,
How
good.
are you?
Yeah, all good, thanks. All good, thanks. Thanks again for joining us today. If it's okay with you, we'd love to start back from the early days of Kelly, talk us through where you started in life, where you grew up, school, college, that sort of thing, and sort of eventually how you found your way into your early career in the world of media, events, and health and well-being.
Okay, yeah. Well, I'm actually speaking with you today from my parents' farm in Iowa, where I'm visiting, and that was my start. I started on a farm in rural Iowa. It's a very quiet life with lots of stargazing, and I think I think I was just really inspired by the skies and really inspired by what's possible with humanity. And I went through a really, as many people do, I think, I went through a very hard time in my teenage years. And when I got through that and got to college, I really saw a lot around unnecessary suffering, and I got really interested with change and how people and cultures and organizations and how large change can happen for individuals or large groups. So that got me really fascinated with transformation and change, and so that's really what drove me into the world that eventually became events and wellness. Was just this curiosity of how do you impact change and create it. So I just really followed the threads. What did life bring with opportunities? I was really good at seeing opportunities and saying yes. So I did a lot of really, really fun things, from firefighting to teaching school to building businesses and producing events that were really focused on helping people grow and change, whether it's leaders or really anybody that wants to grow. So I did, some more focused on leadership and some more focused on just the humans evolving into the best version of the human that you can be.
Amazing. Thanks for going through that. And one of the things that's really, really interesting about your profile is how you went from that type of industry and background and then transitioned into the space sector, which is one of the whole points of why we've done this show, is to talk about the origin stories of people like yourself that maybe don't typically come from a traditional type of industry or transition across into space. So we'll talk about your company, Aquarian Space, shortly. But before that, could you just kind of lead up and talk us through that pathway and how you transitioned from that industry and how you found space?
Yeah, I mean, again, one of my superpowers, I would say, is saying yes. I get offered really interesting opportunities, and I say yes, and I learn how to follow the thread and how to take the adventure. So I was teaching yoga, so I built a couple of different yoga businesses, and I was teaching yoga, and I met this very persistent woman in my yoga class who said, I want to understand what you're doing when you're teaching, and and just really wanted to connect. And her name is Becky Strauss. And And I said, okay. And then she said, Anne, I want to introduce you to my best friend who has a really cool business idea. And he'd like to talk to somebody who's built businesses before. And I said, great. And his name is Michael Heckman. So those are my two co-founders. So I met her by teaching yoga, and we became fast friends. And then I met Michael and likewise became fast friends, and then saw that this guy is a real visionary and had really, really saw something that was in need early. And so from there, I said, well, I've bootstrapped wellness companies. I have not fundraised. This is a new thing, but Michael invited me to come in and be a co-founder. And I said, yeah, I'm going to have to learn, but I'll learn and do this with you because I love space and I really like you too. So we did it. And that's really what it was. And I think that's a lot of what people think, that to be in space, you need to start, in junior high or high school prepping to be an astronaut. And like, well, sure. Or in high school at least, or college to start prepping to be an aerospace engineer. Well, sure. That's one path. Absolutely. You can start young and do it. But, space is business. There's a business in space, and there's, for anything from, running a food truck to, starting a coaching business or a podcast, or, just any kind of business that you're going to build requires a lot of different skills. And so, there's still leadership necessary. There's still marketing necessary. There's still fundraising necessary. So I just, brought what I can do and then learned the things I needed to learn. And I came in and joined this team, and then eventually was asked to lead the team. So here I am years later.
That's an amazing story. And like I say, it's the main kind of ethos behind this podcast. And while we started it, and we were actually coincidentally, we hosted a talk, a kind of a panel discussion with Mel Strickland from Slingshot Aerospace whilst we were in Utah at the SmallSat conference. And this was everything you've just said there. That was the kind of main ingredient of our discussion. That's just what we were trying to talk about, is how do you attract and retain diverse talent within the space sector? And the first thing is actually starting with humanizing it all, right? Exactly what you said. You don't have to be a rocket scientist or an astrodynamicist to get into the space sector. There's so many opportunities. It's so vast. Like you said, sales, marketing, whatever it is, there's an opportunity for everyone. So the hope is to do more and more episodes like this with people like yourself, so it encourages people in the next generation to, break down those barriers and want to get into space.
Yeah, absolutely. Actually, I'm meeting with Mel tomorrow. I know her.
Oh, amazing.
We're in a female space CEO group together, and I think she's amazing and inspiring. So.
Oh, cool. With Laura from Laura Crabtree. Yeah.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. That's great. There's some great women in this group.
And Sassy
there's some great women in the space industry. Yep. It's Sassy. Yep, exactly. And Vanessa Clark. And there's a bunch of amazing women in there. Yeah.
Oh, that's amazing. Yeah. We've known Mel for a while. She was on the podcast too, but I did the podcast also with Sassy a few weeks ago, and it was amazing. But she mentioned the group as well. So that's amazing. That's cool to hear.
It's really, it's one of the most important things, I think, when we're looking at this. I mean, I think I might have just jumped over a question, but I'll say really quickly that I think that really connecting with other leaders in this space and other people in this space it's one of the most important things you can do with business, with a business like space. There's no way we can do it without each other. And especially, we're talking about the moon over here at Aquarian. So there's space that's close to Earth, and then there's space that's like Moon and Mars, which is a kind of the next leap. So, but either way, what Sassy is doing is just it's such a technical leap forward to be able to do these, planes that are going to fly to Japan in 2 hours. These things we're doing are so big, we need each other. And I think it's really a good way to do business, to support each other and really move the ball forward for all of us. So yeah, it's amazing to have groups like this.
Amazing. Great to hear. And I guess now that you're in space and have co-founded this business, Aquarian Space, would you just sort of take the opportunity to tell our listeners a bit about what Aquarian Space do, how they fit into the space sector, and it'd be cool. So to once we understand that, where do you see the company being or growing over the next 5 years or so?
Absolutely. Yeah. So Aquarian is the internet service provider for the solar system. So, the very simple way to describe it is that we are stringing relay satellites like cell phone towers through the solar system. So, instead of, trying to, be in Africa and reach a cell phone tower in Europe to make your call, which doesn't work very good or requires a lot of really strong equipment and a small signal, you get the cell phone tower in Africa, right? So when our customers are on the moon, instead of having to send a signal all the way down to Earth and then they get, a much smaller signal, they can go through our relay and they get a much more powerful signal. So we're really changing the game so that our customers go from a slow dial-up speed experience with a very high demand and a bottleneck, so it's hard for them to get access to it anyway, to being able to just send large amounts of data 24/7 and have all the access they want to data. And why does that matter? Who cares if you have comms in space? Well, let's talk about that. If you're sending a robot, or let's say it's a robot in the form of a rover or a lander, or it's even a little payload that goes on one of those, whatever kind of amazing technology you're sending to space, what are you doing it for? You're doing it to get the data right now. You're doing it right now to figure out, what is this that we're trying to mine? Or, let's try to learn about, is there life out there? Or, let's understand the composite of this whatever, this soil, this planet. They're going out there to get data. And so previously they've been getting back about a third of the data they want, and they get it really slowly. And that's with amazing technology. NASA has really spearheaded this. But, now we're in the next phase. So last year, there were 13 orbiters, landers, and rovers on and around the moon, right? So landers land, rovers roam around, and orbiters orbit, right? Those are satellites. So those are the three kinds of main vehicles that we deal with and spacecraft that we deal with. And by 2030, by the end of this decade, we're looking at around 200. And that's not assuming a huge amount of growth. So it's just the moon is about to just explode with business, and Mars is not far behind. So we're here to meet those customers' needs. They need communications to steer the spacecraft, to get the data back they're collecting, to function, and eventually for astronauts to, whether it's post their Twitter feeds or, communicate with families or send the data back that they're collecting.
Yeah.
It's all those things are needed. So that's what we're doing.
A lot of moon selfies.
There will definitely be moon selfies. And then where will we be in 5 years? In 5 years, it's really going to pick up. So it's, 22 as we're speaking now. So in 27, we're talking about, rovers big enough for humans to sit on them. We're talking about, people going to the moon. We're talking about big data hungry rovers on the moon that want to be sending constant streams of data. So we are in place servicing those needs. We have, by 2027, I think we'll have at least 3 satellites, possibly more, depending on our customers, what they need. We can scale with our customers. But definitely we should have 3 by 2027 doing, high data rate streaming. We can do 4K high definition video 24/7 for our customers. So that's pretty cool for people to watch from down here.
Yeah, that's insane. That's amazing. Look forward to tracking the progress of Aquarian and seeing that. That sounds absolutely amazing. And I guess now that you've sort of embedded yourself into the industry for the past, 4 years or so, all of our guests give a different answer on this, but I'm keen to know what your thoughts and what is it you love most about being in the space sector now that, again, that you've been here for the last 4 years? What is it that you've kind of found about the sector that you love so much about it?
Well, I think, there's 2 things I love about it. One is that coming from a background of building, yoga, wellness, leadership companies and events, I wasn't sure how I would be received. I thought I really liked Michael's idea of, I want someone from outside the industry to do the business side of this business. I thought that was really brilliant. I saw the value in it, but I was curious how the industry would meet me. And I have felt so well received and so well supported by leadership and people in this industry. And that is one thing I love about it, is like, wow, just really a community of people there's a good amount of open-minded, kind, genuine, let's do this, let's figure it out people that have just shown up in my experience. So that's one thing I love. That's more about my experience. And another thing I love is just so cool. I mean, there's this idea that space is out there, right? Space is this thing way out in the distance, and maybe someday there'll be Star Trek, but space isn't really out there, right? Like, space is right here. We're part of space. Space is part of us, right?
Yeah.
We have this because we're just in this little beautiful bubble of a planet, this beautiful atmosphere, protecting us. We feel like we're not part of it, but we are. And I think just the fact that it's getting more accessible right now, and it reminds us of the wonder of what we don't know, and the vastness of what we're really coming from and meeting beyond Earth. I think it's just one of the most beautiful parts of being human. It brings us back to our wonder. And so to be a part of an industry that's bringing that closer to humans and constantly reconnecting people with awe and beauty, I love that about being in the industry, much less the science that's just, whoa, mind-blowing, constantly beautiful to witness.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I couldn't agree more on both counts. And I think the first thing you mentioned, I mean, we've been doing this now with EVONA for the last sort of 4 years or so. So been in the industry sort of same time as yourself. And we had our first major event this year. Because of COVID, we couldn't actually travel over to the US until like the end of last year. So our first event was at the Geointelligence Summit in Colorado, and myself and one of the co-founders, Tom, went, and we were so ridiculously nervous going to it, because we thought we were going to meet all these people, all these PhDs, and how would we be welcomed as potential outsiders maybe. And exactly what you've just said, you hit the nail on the head, really. They were just so welcoming and supportive and so willing to collaborate, and that for us is like, wow, this is like an insane community that we've entered into, where even if people are quote unquote competitors to each other, everybody works together. Everybody seems to have a genuine appetite to want to see others do well in the industry. So that's been amazing for us to witness also.
Yeah. Or at least I think the majority, we're still all different flavors of humans in this industry, right? But like, the majority has been really kind and welcoming. I love hearing that you had the same experience. It's really, it's a pleasure, right? It's a pleasure to be part of a community like this. And then a community of a good amount of them, just like, they're space geeks.
Yeah.
And to be a space geek is to be someone who's in love with this kind of untouchable, beautiful, let's get out there and actually touch it. It's you got to be a visionary, and you got to have a love of something kind of profound, I think, to be a space geek.
Yeah, no, absolutely couldn't agree more. And one of I've mentioned this a couple of times already, but one of the big sort of motives of us starting this podcast is to make space accessible for everyone. And one of the hot topics, I'm sure you've probably spoken to us about with Sassy and Laura and Mel and so on and so forth. One of the hot topics across not just space right now, but sort of STEM at the moment is diversity. So unfortunately the stats, they're not there. They're not anywhere where we need them to be. It's still kind of hard to believe. But as a female leader within the space sector now, what are your sort of thoughts on that? What are your thoughts on diversity in space? What do you feel we should be doing differently across the industry and at sort of STEAM level to try and impact change now, but also for future generations?
Yeah, I mean, it's great. It's a great question. And it's one that it's tricky because running a startup, and I'm really fortunate to be partnered with with a technical partner that has 600. So they are a technical engineering warehouse for aerospace. They're Korean Inc. and they have these 600 top engineers, and they partnered with us in a way that's really unique for us as a startup, right? Because we have access to these 600 aerospace engineers. Which specialists do we need for which thing? And that's amazing as a startup, right? It's incredible. And so there's this way that we want to absolutely have the best of the best antenna expert and the best of the best, payload integration specialist that's been doing it for 40 years and the best of the best. And when you dig into those engineering pools, they are largely very similar demographics. So how do you balance having the best so you are reliable and trustable in a team that's highly investable, which matters, versus having a really diverse team? And you need that, like Michael, my co-founder, had that vision. He's like, let me bring in this woman from very different background to come and help lead this company. How do you bring in that? Because you need that diversity of perspective. It makes you a stronger team. You need different cultural backgrounds, different ethnic backgrounds, and that's going to help, right? So certainly on our engineering team, we do our best to bring in to optimize for diversity there. But outside the engineering world is really like right now where I guess, easier to look at, like, okay, who else do we have on the business side? Who else? What do we need? What roles do we need? And can we optimize for more diverse people here? Like, I don't need my chief of staff to have an aerospace background, but great that she did have some experience with another aerospace company. I don't need I don't need every position to have an aerospace background. So where can I bring in that diversity from other roles? I think is an obvious place to do it. Now, on the engineering side, yes, you can look and be open, and we are doing that, to some more diversity in our engineers. But I think the biggest thing, I like kids. I like talking to kids. I used to teach high school. So, I think that's one thing we can do is, the biggest challenge for me running a startup is I don't have a lot of time to go make those connections. But anybody that reaches out to me and invites me to come talk to a classroom, I am going to prioritize. I'm going to get it in there. I'm going to make it happen. It has to bump into my free time. I'm a mom of a toddler, so free time is a funny word, but it has to go outside the workday, because the workday is really focused on fundraising and technical development. I'm going to make time to go talk to kids, teenagers, and tell them, hey, come, this is a cool place to work. Check it out. And I think specifically, it would be of service for people in the industry to find schools in underrepresented areas, with underrepresented populations that are more diverse. I come from poverty, so I think going to places where there are kids in poverty, a lot of times those kids are really hungry for opportunity, and they're not sure that they can really take it. They're not sure that it's really there's an opportunity for them. And I think the more we can go into alternative schools, the more we can go into places with those underserved teenagers and populations and talk to them about, hey, what do you want to do? Hey, what about space? Are you interested in space? Do you like space? Do you like to look at the stars? Let's talk a little bit about what kind of jobs there are in space, because there are a lot. That's probably what I would suggest. And I think this podcast is helpful. So thank you. Thanks for getting the word out. Really.
Yeah, no, absolutely. No, thank you. And I couldn't agree more. And when we first started the business, we basically agreed between us when we started it, that all the employees that we would hire, we would, a part of their onboarding process, we would have them go through what we call here in the UK, the STEM Ambassador program, where they basically enroll in the STEM initiative. Is a government initiative over here, by the way. It costs nothing, and they enroll into it. But it means a part of that, as a STEM ambassador, it means that once you're enrolled, you have to do between 3 and 5 events per year to keep your ambassadorship, basically. And it means that you can so you can either hold an event, you can chair an event, you can join an event, but you can do what you want. And what we try to encourage the guys here to do is, when they do an event like that at the schools and all that kind of stuff that you mentioned, is to try and try and make the session relatable to the audience.
Yeah.
And what we found was, when we first started doing it, is we were going way too older. We were going into like colleges and universities, and actually we've realized since doing our own research and statistics is that it's far too late. We need to go younger, to try and encourage people at an earlier stage to preserve the industry, essentially.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely.
Makes sense to me. I mean, I just having worked with college kids and high school kids, and it seems like that middle school to high school range is a really smart place to just have some conversations, have some sit down. Hey, what's exciting for you? Hey, have you ever thought about space? I love it. That's a great program.
Yeah, absolutely. And just sort of, I guess, sticking on that point, and I guess it doesn't necessarily always mean the younger generation, but the next thing I wanted to sort of talk to you about was failures and achievements. I think with that, again, not to stick on the younger generation, it can be any generation, but with various social media platforms and the internet, all that kind of stuff, I think people always see the highlight reel of successes and achievements and sort of like the end product of that person's journey and what it led up to it. But what they don't always see is the bad times, the grind, the sacrifices that sort of lead up to that big picture and that end goal. So what would you, I guess, over your career or life or whatever it is, what would you consider so far your biggest failure or biggest learn, and what did you learn from that? And on the other side of that fence, what would you consider your biggest achievement career to date?
Wow, that's so many ways. There's so many ways, so many angles to answer this question. But I'm really looking through the lens of Aquarian right now, because that's the big that's the big thing that's taken my attention for a while here, and probably certainly the biggest thing I've ever taken on, other than being a mother, which is huge. I think the biggest failure first of all, I want to say that Michael, I'm going to keep referencing Michael today. I love that, because he's a really good man. He taught me early on that a philosophy of his career is fail faster to get farther, fail faster to get farther. So fail faster. And of course, in aerospace and technical, that is like in the like early testing, because you have to do it right in space, because you don't get multiple shots most of the time. But when it comes to business, fail faster to get farther. And I think we've done really well with that. So, we had a number of failures early on, but I would say the biggest thing was we really didn't put together, I didn't know, I'd never built a company in this way. We didn't know really how to set up, for example, the equity investing among co-founders, kind of proper co-founder agreements. And we also didn't fully understand what was needed around, what we would need to be pitching, what would be viable initially. So the early phase of this company, we really had the wrong configuration. There was another co-founder that I didn't include in the initial story, who was there at the beginning of the earlier phase of this company, and in both the technology that we were trying to pitch and the co-founder configuration was really didn't work. And it was a big, hard lesson, and a lot of time and energy, which time and energy is money, right? So there was a lot. It was hard. It was a hard mistake. It was a hard mistake to navigate. It was a hard, and co-founder conflicts, and it's definitely one of the big learning things of starting a business, is how to navigate those. And Becky and Michael and I have gone through. It's like family, it's like your business. We say you're business marrying somebody if you're going into business, and it's a big thing to navigate. Marriage or business marriage. So how do you do it well? And when it's not going well, how do you, create the separation, and setting yourself up at the beginning for that in a smart way was something that we did not do. And we got to deal with, and now we're good. And now we've renamed ourselves. We've really rebooted. We're really a fresh company, I would say, at the beginning of 2020. But those early learnings were, it was a big, hard failure and a phenomenal learning experience. Both that and, with that, we also were going to market with an MVP that was just radically not the right fit for, being able to fundraise and get an MVP up there. So we really got to learn, like, okay, we need to think more creatively and less expensive for our MVP. And we really need to have the right co-founders and the right co-founder agreements up front. So now I know if I ever start a fresh one after this, that I'm gonna set things up differently, and I'm gonna be really smart about the MVP strategy. So those were kind of 2 in 1 that happened at the early end of this business. That's on the failure side. That said, oh my gosh, trying to think how I want to. The last year has been such a series of wins. People, you go out and you say you're co-founding a space company that's going to the moon, and you get some looks, and you take a while to get some money in the bank, and you get some looks, you get some doubts, you get some people saying, "What are you doing?" And I think, this last year we went through Space Camp with Seraphim and Seraphim Capital. And and they made this announcement that our cohort represented the top 5% of all seed stage space tech startups globally. And I think the next day was when I first pitched to Tim Draper's team. And then Tim Draper ended up leading our round. And I would say just getting that affirmation, from Seraphim, who was just digging in, really saw all sides of us, having Tim's faith to lead our round and closing that round. And then just these incredible partnerships that we've been leaning on, including with Korean that I mentioned. It's just been this series of wins. And I think taking Aquarian from this what are you doing phase with the wrong, kind of the wrong plan initially. It even had a different name to, Aquarian Space now, funded. We have incredible conversations with partners and customers happening right now. I mean, we have so many breakthrough things coming together right now. It just feels like this year of achievements, and it is definitely the biggest career achievement of my life to just be doing the work I'm doing right now with Aquarian. So those are a few of the kind of highlights of it. And it's like, wow, I had my gut said to stick with this, and I'm so glad. I'm also maybe just a highly committed person. I'm glad. Maybe stubborn. I'm glad. So that feels like we're achieving.
Oh, amazing. Right, that's great to hear about. That was such an amazing moment with the Seraphim guys, and having that realization. I think the whole learning piece you mentioned. It's all kind of hindsight's a wonderful thing, isn't it? I think if you never kind of acted or executed, then you can't have any progress. It's the classic analysis for paralysis.
Yeah,
I think most people that just get unsuccessful, they just do, and they learn along the way. I mean, us four started the business 4 years ago, and I feel like we're still learning now. And it's like, if we knew what we knew, if we knew what we knew now 4 years ago when we started the business, it's like, God, we could be like 10x right now. But it's like you can't sort of dwell on those things. Totally. It's a learning process, isn't it? And like it's fun as well. I think that's one thing I'm learning is you have to. I think when you're driven, resilient, whatever you want to call it, I think most successful people have a level of impatience about them. They want everything yesterday, but it's when you stop and just kind of express some gratitude towards how far you've come in such a short space of time. It's amazing, and learning to enjoy the process, even the headaches and the bumps in the road.
Yeah, like it has to be. It's like working a puzzle or playing a game.
Yeah.
It's like you gotta have fun with it, right? And this is something I've really learned along the way. Again, being wellness teacher and leadership coach before this, and then also being a mom, I've had a really good journey with boundaries, and how do I take care of myself in this, and how do you enjoy it if you're not enjoying it along the way. I've watched friends do this, and it's a terrible recipe for burnout, and that's not good business.
No.
Actually, right? I believe that really good business involves healthy humans. So yes, you want to get things done. Absolutely. But you can work smarter. You can work smarter and get enough sleep. There's pretty good research out there that shows that getting enough sleep and actually taking care of yourself makes you more productive, but actually being happier, like having time. I have okay, when I'm not working, I'm with my son and giving him my attention. I try to, that's also always a learning. Let me be clear. I have to practice sometimes and say, okay, I'm putting my phone on airplane mode at the end of my workday until my son goes to bed. I only get 2 hours with him in that stretch, or 3 hours, depending on which time zone I'm in.
For sure. It's so tough because it's tough to switch. I mean, I've got 2 young daughters, and my eldest one now, not my 4-year-old, my 7-year-old now, is it makes you feel so guilty, but sometimes I don't even realize I'm doing it because you just kind of go into autopilot mode. And because everything is on your device these days, even around the office, she's like, Daddy, get off your phone, play with me, do this with me, do something. I'm like, oh, and then you just kind of have that parent guilt. So I'm still learning to do that now. What you're doing at the moment, I'm still learning to do, and having that time where you do just switch off and really are just 100% present with the kids.
Yeah. I mean, I'm still learning, let's be clear. Sometimes I do that and sometimes I don't. And then I'm like, I think I have to do it. I have to make myself do it. And then I'm actually more present when I get those emails where I'm like, oh, I want to respond right away. It's an investor. It's a this, I need to respond quickly. Okay. I can respond quickly right after I put this child to bed. And I'm more present with work and more present with my child and more present with myself that way. And I'm still learning, but yes, being healthy and enjoying the ride, I think is important. And the minute I find myself as a mother or as a business leader, the minute I find myself getting stuck in the frustration or the doubt or the whatever, the minute I realize I'm not in the right place, right? It's like this practice of coming back to what I love about it. Wait a minute, this child is amazing. Wait a minute, this company, this is such a cool experience. What do I need to do to reset in myself to have fun? I mean, there are moments when I'm reading a 50-page legal document and I'm just like, all right, I'm just going to put myself in a beautiful situation with no distractions and deal. That might not be my joy ever. But it's interesting if I let myself make it interesting.
100%.
Where do you find that internal reset, right? Because otherwise it's a lot.
Yeah, couldn't agree more. And the next question is it's a 2-part question, but it's again kind of leading back to the whole purpose of trying to make these podcasts is not just useful but also resourceful, as people learn. I'm sure people, when they listen to this episode when it gets released, they'll find this so incredibly resourceful in terms of the pearls that you've dropped so far. But what would you say are the best resources that you've identified and utilized over the years, and whether that be courses or programs or mentors that first of all have helped you transition into the space sector over the last 4 years? So that's the first part of the question. The second part is for that person right now, and this person could be an engineer, a software developer, a marketing person, a solicitor, whatever it is, for that person who is kind of looking up at the stars, so to speak, and wants to get into the space sector, but for whatever reason they feel it's beyond their reach, right? They're thinking it's rocket scientists, it's PhD people, it's not for me, I'll never be able to get into space, whether they have a technical or non-technical background. What advice would you give for that person looking to enter into the space sector in 2022 or beyond?
Oh, there's so many layers to that question. First of all, I want to just double click on what we just talked about, that as you're transitioning, one of the best resources is really knowing how to put yourself in a good place. So that's yourself, and knowing yourself and taking care of yourself and trusting yourself to do something different, I would say is, home base. And then going beyond that, because that's, especially if you're looking at entrepreneurship or making a big career change, you need that. You need to like remember your own self-sourcing. Now, if we're talking about entrepreneurship, Seraphim Space Camp works with early stage. It's an early stage accelerator, and it was, I went in a little bit arrogant. I had done quite a bit of learning and quite a bit of, pitch learning experiences. And I thought I had my pitch pretty well dialed. But I listened to my gut, and my gut said, when I got invited to apply for this, I said, check this out. And I just really, really felt like I needed to explore it. And then it made sense. So I went in and I was humbled. That's what happens. I find again and again is I'm, where I get my greatest learning, I'm humbled, and it's great. So
Yeah.
Seraphim Space Camp, if you are an entrepreneur. So doing a good accelerator, that one I think is an extraordinary one. Was huge for me. They really went through every aspect of the business, every aspect of the pitch, and gave deep learning of the why, the how, brought in experts. They spent, there were maybe 7 or 8 of us in the group. I would say maybe 7. And the amount of time we spent with the team, the investor team themselves, giving us feedback on the pitches and coaching us, it was just really, so that was one of my, great resources, that and excellent advisors. So from the beginning, I had one advisor who's now a board member. His name is Nathan Otto, who is just a really sharp businessman and a friend that I knew I could trust. And so I had someone from outside the industry, again, just advising me on the business side. So on the entrepreneur side of resourcing, like finding a good, experienced business person that you can trust to be an advisor that's maybe outside your industry is helpful. Now, that said, then finding advisors in the industry, wow, I have been really, really fortunate. And I like people, so that helps. But to find great advisors. So again, on the entrepreneur side, finding advisors, just reach out to people. Who are some of the interesting influencers on LinkedIn? In the space industry, is very active on LinkedIn. So if you don't know that, go onto LinkedIn, find some influencers that are interesting and ask them, if you have a business idea, ask them if you can have a phone call with them. If they're in your area, ask them if you can buy them lunch. Everybody's got to eat. Somebody asked to buy me lunch and has some business questions. I'm going to say, I'm going to probably say yes. So on the career side, again, I think similar thing, go on to LinkedIn, find people doing the job you want to do, find people maybe in the company you might want to work with, and start to see who will get on the phone, talk to people. Even if you're not a people person and you don't like people that much, find someone that resonates with you and just get some phone calls. I think that people are the best resources. And there are a lot of people out there that are happy to make a referral, make an introduction, help you out. Most of them aren't looking to get paid. Many of our advisors specifically said, "Oh, I'll help you for free. I don't need to advise." And I said, "Okay, but would you actually like to be on a journey with us for a few years? Because then we'll be happy to work with you in a formal way here." So that's probably my biggest advice. So LinkedIn is a resource.
Yeah.
And then humans on LinkedIn, find some that resonate with you and talk to them and ask them questions.
Yeah, absolutely. We've definitely found the same thing with our current advisory board as well. That's exactly how those relationships first started. And that kind of also stems back to what we said earlier on in the episode around just how welcoming and helpful everyone is in the community as well. Everybody is willing to help, or if they can't, refer you to somebody. So yeah, that's amazing. I couldn't agree more. And I think it's just having, like you mentioned, is always just having the confidence to ask the question, because a lot of people just never ask. So if you don't ask, you won't get.
Exactly. I want to double click on that, because it's like, it's not just asking hey, will you have a conversation with me? But when you're in the conversation, it's the asking, would you, can we have another call? Or would you consider advising for us? Or would you make that introduction? Or can I use your name when I reach out to this person? Like, actually ask the bold thing, and with that, there is a way. So this comes back to internal resourcing. celebrate the rejection. When someone you really wanted to work with says no, just appreciate, like, that person was not a good fit for this. I'm so glad I asked, and now I know that's not the right fit, and I'm moving on to the next. It's the same with, investors. It's like, okay, that wasn't the right fit. Okay, great. I'm so glad we're clear on that. Right? Celebrate the no, because it's one less thing to track, and move on to the next. So, same with this. It's like you fail faster to get farther, right? Get comfortable with rejection, and every rejection is going to lead you toward to what you're seeking, whether it's the new job or the advisor for the company you want to build, or just the friend in the industry. Like, let yourself get rejected, and don't take it personally.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I couldn't agree more. And our final question is, you've kind of already touched on it, but what are your thoughts just in terms of that kind of space satellite communications sector that we kind of discussed about, and where Aquarian involved? How do you see that part of the sector evolving over the next 5 to 10 years?
I was specifically talking about the moon. There's so many answers to this, right? There's the Earth local is what we call, is how we internally reference it. It's right. Everything from Geo down to Meo, down to Leo, down to Earth is what we call Earth local. And that's a very different, it's similar but different, right? The whole telecommunications industry here on Earth, it's in space for Earth. And there are some extraordinary things happening there already, right? Like we are tracking shipments. We are, in supply chain information. We are understanding what's happening in climate changing. We are using it for so many things right now that, we didn't even understand were possible even 10 years ago, 20 years ago. So there's a lot happening there. But, really what I know about is at the moon and then Mars. And, what I can say is that at the moon, things are picking up fast, that in 5 years, we are looking at a very high speed, high data rate, it would be more accurate, information superhighway between the moon and the Earth and then Mars. So we are creating this data superhighway. And so the first thing is to get the data moving, and then the next thing is to help to serve our customers, and what else, any other data services that they want support with. And so that's really what's coming. What's coming is that people are going to the moon and then Mars. It's happening, and they're going to start spending more time there. And there are people that are going to be producing the oxygen to fuel Starship to go back and forth. There are going to be real loads of, whether it's mining to, there are real industries happening. And so there will be a satellite infrastructure to support all of that happening really fast at the moon. And it is a monumental shift in the history of humanity for this to be happening in these next few years. So it can't be overstated as far as I'm concerned.
Absolutely. It's so exciting to watch it unravel. And I think for me is actually making it's doing this. It's making the entire sector more accessible, and that that time frame that you mentioned as well. It's so exciting for me to see people that I know, that friends and family members and all that kind of stuff. Still now when I meet friends that I haven't seen for a while, or family members at a function, I tell them about the sector that I'm in and some of the companies that help staffing and scale what they do. They still kind of like, they're completely lost. They're like, isn't space just astronauts and rockets? And when you tell them about these types of things specifically and try to sort of, explain it to them, I think they feel that it's just, never going to happen. It's beyond reach and that kind of stuff. So I can't wait personally to see all these things and companies like Aquarian Space actually making this whole, sector more accessible for, the average civilian, and seeing it all grow. It's amazing to see.
Yeah. Thank you.
Absolutely.
Yeah, it's fun.
Yeah, it's super fun. And like I say, I just feel so grateful. And you've mentioned it a few times as well, to, be a part of the community. But yeah, thank you so much for joining us today. I just want to take a moment to sort of recognize your time, and yeah, very, very thankful. This has been amazing. I've really, really enjoyed it. Can't wait for everyone to hear this episode. Thank you ever so much for taking the time to join us today.
Thank you so much, Richard. Really a pleasure to connect with you. And I'm a big fan of what you're doing and a big fan of this podcast. So thank you. Thank you for your time and for your mission.
No worries. Thanks, Kelly. Take care.
You too.